Hello Assassins, Gustav, also known as Gargudon here, and welcome to the 1-year anniversary special edition episode of the Memory Corridor. Just like this podcast has been for the last year, it is hosted by me, and for each episode I have a guest with me who will be discussing a topic regarding Assassin's Creed with me. As I said, today you are listening to the 1-year anniversary special edition episode, which in itself is kind of crazy, but for our topic we have got the ultimate Assassin's Creed game. So today for the anniversary episode I've got my friend Loomer, also known as David, with me here. David was also featured on the AZ movie special episode I did back in December last year, which some of you might remember. So to have you back here on the show, dude, for a second time is beyond awesome. Now I know you've done this before, but just to those who might not know about you, just tell the audience a little bit about yourself and the things you do here in the Assassin's Creed community.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely, no problem.
So I have been doing videos on my YouTube channel relating to Assassin's Creed ever since Brotherhood. So it's a mix of, I did some multiplayer tutorials back in the day, and I do interviews with the developers of the games, and video essay series, other just random videos about Assassin's Creed here and there. Every once in a while I'll do a tribute, or I'll go visit a location, make a video series about it, and how it compares to Assassin's Creed, but that's pretty much it.
Absolutely. So as you can hear, David's a pretty awesome guy and does some awesome things in this legendary community. Now, should you be interested in staying up to date on all these awesome things, links to all David's social media pages will be in the description below, like they always have been with every guest on the show for the past year. But now, with guest introductions and such out of the way, it is time to kick off today's anniversary topic discussion. Let's do this. So, firstly, I know this topic sounds like a very big and wide one, and don't get me wrong, because it is the biggest one that me and a guest has discussed on this show to date. Now, as this topic is so big, I've decided that this anniversary special episode is going to be split into 3 parts. Part 1, which is this video, will focus on story, setting, and time period. Part 2 will focus on side missions, open world, and combat. And finally, Part 3 will focus on modern day. So, in this special edition episode, we are going to dig deeper into what all 3 mentioned aspects of an Assassin's Creed game could look like in the ultimate, ideal, and biggest AC installment to date. Under this, we are going to talk about how elements from other games could be implemented into AC, wish lists, and many more things like that. Finally, this is in many ways going to be a recap of everything that has been discussed on this channel on the Memory Corridor, Into the Animus, etc. Throughout the last year, but this is still going to be just as fun, and we're all going to have explored something new when we're done recording and watching these videos. Now, just before we make this go, do you have anything to say or ask?
No, I think we're good.
Alright then. With everything said and done then, let's send this anniversary discussion into space. So, my first question for you is, what is your opinion on the newly introduced black box missions in Assassin's Creed Unity and Syndicate, and the upcoming quest system in Assassin's Creed Origins, and what would your ideal AC mission structure / concept be like?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of what they did in Unity and Syndicate. At the same time, there have been other games that I've played around that time period that I felt AC could definitely... I felt like they did it even better than AC. I really enjoyed the Dishonored series. I think the way that they have structured their open-ended assassinations are just kind of really incredible. And then they always have really unique non-lethal options as well. A little different for Assassin's Creed. You can't really do the lethal, non-lethal option because it's set in history and things only happened one way with regards to whether they lived or died. But even if you just took the lethal options available in the Dishonored series, and just like the level design that they have for these assassinations is just absolutely incredible. And so, the first Dishonored came out, I think, around 2012, and I was just absolutely blown away. This was before Unity and Syndicate, and the black box stuff, although AC4 kind of did black box type stuff as well.
When was that?
But...
The black box. When did we see the black box stuff there? I can't remember.
Well, I mean, it depends on if you're defining black box as like the thing where you see all of the opportunities and it like gives you stats or whatever, then yeah, it's only Unity and Syndicate. But I mean, like AC4 had a fairly open-ended, they made a very conscious decision to the term black box in regards to AC assassinations, as I've always understood it, means we kind of just give you, a target, and then we let you decide how you just. We give you a lot of freedom on how to do the actual execution.
Definitely, as Mark Alexei Cote said in the video, it's definitely, you explore several options to assassinate your target. You can do whatever you fancy.
And, like Unity and Syndicate added like these unique kills, like and stuff like that, but, AC4 was very much a conscious move towards that kind of model.
Absolutely.
So that and the recent Hitman game, the 2016 reboot of Hitman, was really just like the amount of opportunities and the creativity and things you could do in that game. Like that game and Dishonored, I think, have, as much as I do like the black box style assassinations for like Unity and Syndicate, like Hitman and Dishonored just absolutely raised the bar for me as far as like what's possible and what Assassin's Creed should really be kind of leading the way in doing. And so while I do really enjoy what they are, I feel like they should be doing a lot more. It should really be Assassin's Creed that people look to as much as Dishonored and Hitman, I think.
Absolutely. It's funny that you mentioned Dishonored because it was once free on Xbox Live. So I tried it out and played it for about an hour, and it didn't really catch me, so I never really kept going. But I definitely got a taste of the concept and I looked through the achievement list, that it is like there's even an achievement for completing the entire game without killing anyone, which is like challenge accepted if you're that type of player. But I see what you mean, that it's very optional if you want to kill somebody, and how you want to do it is really yours. And I haven't played Hitman, but I've seen different YouTube videos and titles and gameplay from Hitman in YouTube videos, and you can take out your target in the most insane ways, like if you want to poison his drink or drop a boulder on him, or like you can really just do whatever you want. And I will say I prefer the black box-ish concept that I guess we also have in Hitman then, because this quest system in AC Origins, to talk about that, I am open to it, but at the same time I'm a bit skeptical about it, because did you play Watch Dogs 2?
Yes.
I feel like one of the problems with that game is it feels so repetitive, that there's not really like a wide variety of missions. There's like the main operations, like the story, and then there's the side operations, but they're really the same thing. Like even the side operations, they end with the DedSec making a video and the anonymous hacker speaker guy doing everything. So there's not really a variety, and that's what I could fear with this new quest system, that everything just becomes kind of repetitive, that there's not really a big variety. And also, I just in general I love the optional objectives. And I have a feeling that this quest system could take those away. I don't know about you, about the constraints we've had.
I have mixed feelings on the optional objective stuff. I thought they were really well done in Brotherhood, and then ever since then they've kind of just been annoying.
It's actually reversed for me. In Brotherhood, they were very they were easier, I'd say, and here it in Syndicate and Black Flag, it kind of adds a little to if you want to be stealthy or not. Kind of gives you an ultimatum.
But I guess from my perspective, it's not so much about whether they're difficult or easy, although some of them can be really frustrating and that's really annoying. But it's more about giving the players kind of a reason to do it, and I thought Brotherhood did it perfectly, where they said, they had a very logical explanation for it. They said, Ezio did things exactly this way, and while the Animus gives you a little bit of freedom to deviate, if you happen to do it exactly the way that Ezio did it, you'll achieve greater synchronization with him, and you'll be able to access these repressed memories that he has of, Christina, everything. And it was a really good narrative explanation and a good narrative reason to do it. And then ever since then, it's just been, oh, and by the way, here's like a checklist of like random bullshit that we want you to do. And so I wish they would come back to the era when everything had a narrative purpose and reason for doing it, instead of just existing for the sake of existing, or in the case of this, I guess, existing just purely as a gameplay concept and having no narrative tie-in whatsoever. I really miss the way they did it in Brotherhood.
Absolutely. I'd say since Desmond died, I can definitely follow you a bit that it's really just, oh, we want you to do this and this and this. And that, I just wanted to point that out. I guess you could call it ironic that they're called optional objectives, but if you want to achieve like 100% sync in the game, you actually they're not optional, then you need to do them. But as you said, it's still like a good narrative explanation for it, like just continuity in-game continuity.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. So, and I don't want to, just to get back to like the new quest system that we also saw in the recently released video, I don't want to talk too much about that before I've tried it, but do you think it could be a bit similar to the operation system we had in Watch Dogs 2?
I don't quite remember how the operation system worked. I think the quest system, I'm not 100% sure, but it feels like the main difference between the quest system and the old style of doing side missions and the main missions is that with the quest system, you can have multiple quests going on at once, and you can kind of come back to them.
Yeah.
Like, you can have multiple quests in progress at one time, and you can kind of do them all, out of order if you want, in a sense, kind of in any order. And I think that's kind of the main difference between that and the old system. I don't think Watch Dogs really had something quite like that I remember.
I was just in Watch Dogs 2 a bit surprised when, considering in the first game we had like the acts, we had Act 1 to 5, that it had similarities with the sequences we've had in Assassin's Creed. I was a bit, I guess, surprised that, now it's this operation system, and it just kind of, I don't really know, it felt fun, and at the same time it just begun like feeling repetitive as well. Like I actually wanted like missions. It made it feel less mission-ish, this operation system, and that's kind of what I don't want the quest system to end up being. But we've also had a sip of it, like in Syndicate, you could really, like, there were both Evie memories and Jacob memories. You could do them in any order you wanted to, really. And then you'd unlock the final memory in a sequence when you had done all those. So yeah. But to wrap it up, like ideal AC mission structure, I just like to see something, that really gives freedom to the player, but still has like but it still feels like you're in a mission. And I definitely want the optional objectives, because it just adds a level of satisfaction. Like, that may be narcissistic saying, but if I like go for the optional objectives compared to maybe a friend who doesn't give a shit about them, I just feel superior compared to that guy. And I feel like every video game that has like a system, also Grand Theft Auto 5, if you've played that with its gold medal system.
No, I haven't played that yet.
Okay. It also has like, you need to complete it in 9 minutes. You need to get that many headshots and stuff. Like I have like 60 out of 70 gold medals in that game, so I need to get the last 10. I've wanted to do that for 4 years now.
I don't know. I know there's a lot of people out there who are like me, who also just really couldn't give a shit about the optional objectives, and they, depending on which game it is, sometimes they're really obnoxious too.
Absolutely.
Like both in requirements, and then like AC3 would flash like these big red X's on the screen if you didn't do them, and made you feel like, oh, sorry for not doing this thing I didn't need to do.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to keep like showing it in my face like every time a mission objective comes up.
Absolutely.
So in my opinion, like, I think there'll be people like you who, similar to the GTA model, it's like all about like the extra challenge and being able to kind of say you did this where other people didn't. But for people like me, and I don't know, probably at least a few other people, I'm kind of like, give me a narrative reason for it, like in Brotherhood, or just fuck off with it. Like, I don't really care otherwise. And if you just keep showing it in my face, then there's no real reason for me to do it. It's just gonna annoy me.
And Assassin's Creed is in general all about stealth, in my opinion. So if there is an side objective, like don't get detected or avoid open conflict, it just adds like it motivates me. Let's say it like that, because I love just being stealthy no matter what.
Yeah, but I mean, the series hasn't really been all about stealth, right? Stealth is just one pillar, along with the free running and the combat. It's not necessarily greater than any of those other pillars, I think.
But my ideal approach to like a fortress would any sword or gang hideout or anything would definitely be stealth first, and then if I get detected, well, then I find my way out of it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people approach it that way, but I mean, Ubisoft designs these games a lot of times to try to appeal to people who don't like stealth as well.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of a mix. And I don't think Assassin's Creed has necessarily been 100% stealth based, ever.
That's also just in Syndicate. I'll say this, and then we can get the question too. That's cool with you.
Yeah, sure.
And that's also what I liked in Syndicate, the fact that you had two characters. There's one, Jacob, for the combat type of guy, and you also had like combat skills that only he could unlock. And then there's a character for like the stealthy player who had stealth skills that only Evie could unlock.
Right. Yeah, and I think that was
like a nice sign that all depending on like what type of approach person you are, you could play according to that. And also in Origins we have like the hunter, the seer, and the warrior, kind of all depending on what type of player you are.
Right.
Alright. Now let's get to question 2. Where would you like to see your ideal Assassin's Creed game set in the world, and during what historical time period? If you know about history, I don't want to force you to do. If you can come up with anything, not to sound rude.
Yeah. No, I'm not. Yeah, no, I'm not really a history buff.
Absolutely.
But I mean, like, I don't know. I don't really deviate that much from the fans. I think for a lot of time. For quite a while, people have been clamoring for ancient Egypt, and I was on board with that, and now we're getting that. And then feudal Japan is another big one that other people constantly bring up, and I think that would also be fantastic. And then I don't know, the other one that one of the fans brought up a little while ago that just really stuck with me was doing kind of like an medieval like King Arthur type game where it leans very heavily into the mythology of both the legend and the series, and so you have really copious amounts of pieces of Eden being used for quote unquote magic, and the Sword of Eden as King Arthur's sword and everything. And I think it'd be cool as kind of a one-off, really weird game where they just really lean heavily into the pieces of Eden, and that's something I'd like to see. But there's multiple things I'd like to see. I'd like to see a modern day game, like an actual modern day game would be amazing.
Like full modern day game, only in the modern day. Me too.
Yeah, I mean, ideally it would have been Desmond's game, right?
I haven't read them, but we've had several comic books and such that are like that, right?
Yeah, a little bit, but I mean, they're comic books. They're not a game. It's a totally different medium, and Assassin's Creed is a video game series first and foremost, and so shoving this kind of stuff into the comics, in my opinion, is not really. You can do it; it's all right, but it's not like you can do things in gameplay and in video games that you can't do in comic books, and vice versa. And this is a series that is rooted in video games, and I think this series, deserves a good modern day game at some point. I don't think they'll ever actually do it, but I'm always gonna feel cheated out of the Desmond game that it was building towards.
And just to be sure, you said medieval before. That is like a synonym for Middle Ages, right?
Yeah, or like
yeah, absolutely. We've already had like the Altair game, Assassin's Creed 1, which was in the Middle Age. Just
yeah, but I'm talking about like specifically like the King Arthur,
like
and the Knights, the Round Table, like
the
legend
11th
itself,
century or something. Or when was it King Arthur was? I can't remember. But yeah, that could be great.
know.
Like you say, you go like full fantasy, like a lot of fantasy books and stuff. What is it? All those movies are called like Aura.
Yeah, just go on as like
the Dragons.
Just do it as like a one-off game.
Absolutely.
Well, not necessarily dragons. Not necessarily dragons, but the concept of magic is. I mean, it's still. I mean, you can't just throw a dragon in there, right? Like it has to be still rooted in science and things that could actually happen. But could easily explain, Merlin using a piece of Eden to generate what looks like magic to everyone else, and King Arthur kind of leading people with the Sword of Eden. The further back you go in time, and you start hitting more. Stuff that's leans more heavily into legends and mythology, the more it just opens up the opportunity to use pieces of Eden as they were used in the original. In AC1, they talk about how all this stuff from the Bible, like all the plagues, turning like a staff to a snake, like water to wine, like all of these things, parting and then closing up the Red Sea, like all of these things in the Assassin's Creed world have literally happened, and they happened because of pieces of Eden. And so it's like I would love to see that in a game, because most of the games kind of just use pieces of Eden on the periphery. They're kind of just the MacGuffin of the story. Absolutely. Where people go to like look for them the whole game, and then maybe you see it being used a little bit at the end. But I think it would be just really cool, just like as a one-off. I don't want every single Assassin's Creed game to be like this, but just like, as a change of pace, maybe one of these games comes out and leans really heavily into that.
Like one game,
and I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, do like one game that is kind of Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings inspired. Fantasy or medieval, you said.
I don't think it needs to be inspired by those works of fiction. It's inspired by kind of the real life legends that are. It doesn't
like medieval and stuff. So I thought like big swords and ships and such and such.
Yeah, but it has to be rooted in actual history, right? So like you can't just say like Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings. It's got to be. I mean, the real touchstone is like the actual like King Arthur legend.
I get what you mean. It's just like I always it's kind of like inspired, like or those works of fiction are kind of inspired by the medieval ages.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly.
Just from my side of this question, I'd say, I guess, like set in the world, I'd say there's definitely some parts of Europe we could definitely explore. You said medieval. That was like King Arthur. That was in England, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Absolutely. We could. That's also something I've heard several times, that a game set in the Viking Age is something that could be great. And I'm open to the idea. And then we could explore Ireland. I also just went to Ireland here this last month from when this is recorded. It's a lovely place, and I'd love to see an AC game set in Ireland and make and set it in semi-ancient Ireland, because the country has a big history with St. Patrick and the Viking Age and how Dublin was founded.
Yeah.
And make it like a big map. Then you have the city of Dublin, and then you have like some of the more nature sites, like the Wicklow Mountains. There's something called that. Because Ireland, there's still a lot for me to explore in that country, but some places are magical, and I'd love just to see that recreated in a video game in general. And that could either be in the medieval ages, the Viking Age. We could go even further back in history to I can't even remember the ages, but semi-ancient Ireland, let's call it that. And I also just That's also it, because there was a, leading up to World War One, the Easter Rising. You may have heard of that before, in Dublin. And that's also it. I'd say the maximum I want to go up in history in an AC game is World War One. So that could work. And we've already had a sip of that a taste of that in Syndicate.
Yep.
I just love to explore, some of some more of the UK Ireland region and the Viking Age too. That could be great. But my dream game, as I've also said multiple times, I guess, is definitely something that is related to the North American saga era, and actually maybe it would be something set in the American Civil War, and and make parallels to Assassin's Creed 3 and kind of the whole aftermath of that. Maybe a big game that is the aftermath of Assassin's Creed 3 that then leads up to the American Civil War. That is probably my dream game. And see characters like Connor and Shay return, them having a big fight, and oh man, that would be lovely in my opinion.
I guess. I don't know, and from my opinion,
absolutely.
I think it's ridiculous that Age has been shafted this entire series. I've had enough of the Americas and Europe in a lot of ways, and so I'm just and we're getting our first game set in Africa 10 years after the game started, after the series started. And so it's I lean towards more exotic locations that haven't been explored already. I don't need to see Shay and Connor again this soon.
South America?
Yeah, South America. We could see some South American stuff, sure.
I don't know much about the history there, but I'm sure we can find something.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to see some South America too. But I think it's Asia's this humongous continent that's just been ignored, and it has such a rich history. Then it's just crazy to me that and I'm not counting. Chronicles China doesn't count
as an Asian game.
But it's sorry, say again.
It doesn't count as game set in Asia.
Yeah, because it's you can't just cram all of the Asian settings into these Chronicles side-scrolling games. I'm talking about an actual AAA open world recreation of it.
I played it recently, and I will say, it definitely has, even though it's 2.5D, it definitely has the potential, because I've seen pictures and stuff, the amazing landscapes there are in China and Vietnam and Japan. We could definitely get an ass-kicking game set in Asia with Origins graphics, and man, that could be amazing set in Asia.
Yeah, for sure.
But I just don't want it to become too much of a samurai game then, because or maybe I don't know. That doesn't really matter to me.
There's a million ways they could take it,
absolutely,
and they just haven't even tried. And I'm just kind of a little upset about that.
Yeah. Because some people said with Black Flag, too much pirate, too much assassin, and in reverse. But that didn't really bother me, so I doubt that samurai, assassin, samurai would bother me either.
I'm sure they'd handle it.
Absolutely. So let's just wrap this up and say there are lots of opportunities out there. Asia, the Viking Age, and South America. There's lots of opportunities out there. Now, just for my final question of part 1 here. How do you like the idea of an Assassin's Creed game where there throughout the story are multiple choices at specific times, as well as multiple endings where these choices will have an impact on what happens there?
This is pretty easy for me to answer because I'm a pretty big purist on the basics of the series, and
absolutely
those concepts and the basics of the series say history happened one way and you can't change it. And so I don't ever expect to see an Assassin's Creed Telltale series, let's put it that way. I don't expect to see multiple choices or multiple endings in Assassin's Creed ever, and I wouldn't want them either.
Absolutely.
Works for some series, doesn't work for AC, in my opinion.
I just wanted to get this question in there as I've been playing Life is Strange a lot lately. I still haven't finished it yet, but I certainly just wanted to get it in there. I know what you mean. that history happened in one way, but we've seen in the end of Liberation. Do you remember that Erudito? They kind of, or that was Abstergo that like glorified the ending where Aveline joins the Templars, but then Erudito they hack the server and they show you what really happened. That she killed every single one of them. So you could kind of use that concept and kind of make it that, and it wouldn't be like huge choices, but it would definitely just be like smaller choices. And then the ending, that's it. You may not. Grand Theft Auto 4. Have you played that?
Yes.
Grand Theft Auto 4. Do you remember that there was like you meet the mafia guy, and then you can do one of two things. You can go for the money and go work with the guy you hate, or you can go straight and kill him for everything he's done, all the pain he's brought you.
Vaguely. I mean, it was like a decade ago.
Dmitry Roskolov, biggest douchebag in the gaming of history.
No, I don't really remember it, but I don't think
Absolutely.
I just don't think that Liberation's ending is like analogous to allowing multiple choices in the series. I mean, in Liberation, it still only happened one way. It's just here's Abstergo lying to you and showing you a different version of that, and I don't really think that's a very solid foundation for building on multiple choice type things. I just don't like. I really am adamant about being against this. Like, to me, it just violates core principles of the series.
You got that.
And so it's like
you got it, man.
I totally understand some people would be interested in it, but for me, I'm like, it's just, you gotta look for a different series. It's not Assassin's Creed.
I know what you mean. But then you could just do it like this, because just to finish the Grand Theft Auto part, there it was like the last 3 missions that would change, all depending on what you choose to do right there. It impacts like who dies at the end of the game, and just impacts like the ending and how sad it is. And I know that Assassin's Creed relies on history, but Syndicate was like a lot of the characters were fictions there. Like even the antagonist you murdered there. So this is where you might just pull the Syndicate card and make up some fictitious characters just to make, like, I guess, let's say let a sequence 12 play out. Like 3 missions, let those play out, and let those or those die. Fictitious characters, depending on who you do, what you choose to do.
But it doesn't matter whether the characters were made up by Ubisoft or not. They're still all under the umbrella of this. You are experiencing history.
Absolutely,
and history includes both real life characters in the real world and also these characters that Ubisoft made up. But in the series, there's no distinction between that, right?
Absolutely.
There's just characters, period, and those characters either lived or died according to history.
Absolutely.
And it's only one of those things. And so you can't say just because it's a fictional character that you can have a multiple choice thing that happens to them. That's not how that's just not how it works.
I know what you mean, but I will say that is the only way it could work. If the main Templar...
No, it couldn't. No, it really could not work that.
But get this, the main Templar, let's say he's a real guy. He dies no matter what. But some characters, fictional characters that have been your sidekick, and here it isn't about history. Here it's all about what happens in my heart. Seriously, just...
I mean, your headcanon can be different from what happens in the game, but whether or not they're fictional characters or real characters or the main Templar or your sidekick, like, everybody's just a human being in history, and they either live or die, like, at a certain time, and you can't change that. Like, period. It's immutable. It's part of the core of the series.
Oh, yeah.
Like, all these other things are, like, it's literally something that you just cannot justify.
You can say it like that. But let's just say like this, and then I think we should wrap this up. Let's say that the source material, the source material historians use, that the history around these persons that existed in history is very unclear, and, this isn't like a genetic memory. This is like more of a simulation, kind of like the Helix we had in Unity and Syndicate. and therefore historians
Well,
can't have made up an exact reason. Like, one source says that this happened, another one says that this happened, and then it's kind of up to you which way
but
you want to go.
yeah, but the whole point of, I mean, Helix still uses animus technology, which is genetic memory, and the whole point of genetic memory is that it shows you what actually happened, and that, you know, the whole point of the series has been, well, not the whole point of the series, but one of the big things about the series is it shows you the way things actually are, you know, free from the ravages of time and people's memories and things like that. And it's just, it's, I mean, if you're talking about, it sounds like you're talking about just making up like a scenario outside of genetic memory, and at that point you're not playing Assassin's Creed anymore, right? Assassin's Creed is genetic memories and and actual history. So it's hard for me to get on board with like an idea of, oh, like some Abstergo people are making a simulated reality that you can play through that's kind of based on history, but you can do some other things. It's like, yeah, you can make that work in the lore, I guess, but it's like, it's kind of a pointless exercise to me, because at that point it's no longer Assassin's Creed to me.
I can feel like if this is ultimately something I'll take, I think I'll bring it up on another episode.
Yeah, sure.
But I still think, even though you got it, it's history. It happened in one way. It's just, you know, we've seen it, and I know those are pure fiction, but we saw it in Far Cry 3, and from what I've heard in 4, I haven't played that yet. That
I played both.
That you could choose to kill that or that person, but it wouldn't really impact it. And the only reason why I even like would like to perhaps see this is really just for like an emotional ending. Maybe the one that is more like satisfying, more happy, or one that is like super sad, and kind of give the freedom to the player, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what I can say that wouldn't just really be rehashing what I've said before. There's plenty of ways to give freedom to the player without violating the very basis of the series, like setup and how things work, which you would, because even if, ultimately it doesn't matter if you kill or spare this person or whatever. I mean, you could say that about a lot of the Telltale games or whatever. It still doesn't have any bearing on the fact that you can only, important things like that only happen one way in history.
Absolutely.
And you can never get away from that. Right?
I know what you mean. Alright, I'll say this last thing and then I think we should close this. Let's say it like this then. Everything happens, like, all depending on which way you choose to go through sequence 12. Everything still happens, but there's a glitch around the genetic memory, so it kinda shows one of two ways, but everyone still dies in both things, everything still happens, but one is just more emotional than the other. That is perhaps the only thing that could work. I mean, in that
okay, so you're saying like, oh, there's a glitch in the animus and now you can suddenly choose and it'll actually show you what would happen if you did the thing other than what history did, or
and Assassin's
something,
Creed 2,
but
you know,
I guess, like,
I
guess it doesn't interest me at all, though.
In Assassin's Creed 2, those were DLCs there.
You mean the missing sequences?
Yeah, the missing sequences.
Right, what about them?
Yeah, it was just, I just thought about them, you know, that they weren't there. There was, I can't remember if it was like a glitch that you couldn't see those until like, the missing sequences.
They said it was corrupted data.
Corrupted data, yeah.
Yeah, and then they they uncorrupted the data, and then you could play through them. And then in reality, you know, the developers finished up those two sequences and released them as DLC, is what really happened. But it was never about, here's one version of a sequence, or here's another version, or a version different from history. It still follows the rules of the franchise, right? It's still...
he was like, you know, a real guy and everything.
What are you talking about?
Savonarola, the guy in Bonfire of the Vanities.
Yes.
He was like a real character and everything. I don't know much about him, but he was probably insane.
Yeah, he was absolutely a real character.